I would like to call the Finance and Business Operations Committee meeting to order. As we begin, I would ask our secretary to call the roll to ensure that we have a quorum.
Regent Duckett,
Here.
Regent Griscom, here. Regent Hatch, here. Regent Kraus, Regent Prescott, here. Regent Smith, here. Regent Sperling, Regent White. You have a quorum.
Thank you, Madam Secretary. A quorum being present, I officially call this meeting to order. The first item on the agenda is the review of the minutes from the April 13th and May 18th, 2017 special call meeting of the Finance and Business Operations Committee. Does anyone have any questions regarding this item? If not, is there a motion to approve the committee reports from the April 13th and May 18th, 2017 special call meeting? Is there a second? This item does in fact requires a voice vote. All in favor signify by aye.
Aye.
Opposers, same sign. Thank you. The next item on the agenda is the review and consideration of maintenance and mandatory fees and tuition recommendations. For that, I will call on Vice Chancellor Sims at this time to give that report.
Good afternoon. Before I begin, Mr. Chair, if you'll allow me, the minutes that you just adopted evidence that this committee has met on 2 occasions, spent considerable amount of time in conversation about the item that will be before you in terms of the recommendations. Wanted to ensure that that was clear on the record, that this is not a presentation of first impression for members of the committee and board. If we could, we will start with mandatory fee recommendations. Again, we have one item before you today. This is the Columbia State parking project. Just as a summary, again, the committee has reviewed this on a couple of occasions already. The Columbia State Williamson County campus is in many respects a landlocked campus. It's a campus that has seen substantial growth since it opened 24 months ago. Parking has become a barrier to increasing to accommodating the increased enrollment at that campus. This proposal, this capital project, would be to allow the campus to proceed with construction of a parking facility that would expand parking on the campus by 248 spaces. It would also create the opportunity in future years to add a couple of additional decks to that parking that would allow another 250 or so spaces to be created for a total increase of 500 parking places at Williamson County's campus. It's projected that this will meet the minimum growth requirements that's needed for that campus over the next few years. The request had been to adopt or consider a debt service fee to support debt issued through the School Bond Authority. After conversation with the committee and conversation with President Smith, that request was reduced. The original request was for a higher amount than $22. It was $30 a semester or $60 a year to generate the debt service needed to service that debt on the parking facility. In conversation with the President, she has agreed and revised her proposal to reduce that debt service requirement to $22 a semester, and then she will pledge additional revenues of the institution to meet the debt service requirement on that facility to service the $3.6 million in debt on that facility. This table shows you where Columbia State currently is in terms of their mandatory fee position. They are, again, one of the institutions that has the lowest amount of mandatory fees in the college system. This would bring them up to, I believe it's third highest in the system, but still within the range of fees that have been approved at other campuses. So, Mr. Chair and members, the recommendation of your staff at this point in time is that you approve the debt service fee of $22 per semester, $44 per year for Columbia State. That Columbia State, in addition to that, pledge additional revenues to meet the underwriting requirements for the School Bond Authority to allow them to issue $3.6 million in debt to allow this parking facility project to go forward. As I noted, Mr. Chair, this item has been a topic of considerable discussion with the committee previously. Later, I'll be glad to answer questions. At this point in time, I will ask you later in the presentation to actually act on this or consider this recommendation.
Excuse me, are there any questions regarding Columbia State's request at this time?
Not so much a question, but let me ask Vice Chancellor Sims, as we've gone through this, this has clearly been vetted with the students there at Columbia State. They have acknowledged their support of the action, since it does involve students at both at their main campus and then in Williamson County. Am I correct with that?
Yes, Regent Grissom, I should have mentioned that the SGA at Columbia State has expressed support for this, wholehearted support, I should add. And as you note, this is a fee that would apply to all their campuses. Columbia State, as with most of our college campuses, that mandatory fee structure is not site-specific, it is across. But the representation among the SGA and the letters of support that we received evidence support from their various locations.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? If not, please proceed.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. What I would like to do now is migrate toward, again, the conversation on maintenance fees for fiscal 17-18. We will start with indicated student revenue increases. Again, this is an item that's been discussed several times with the members of this committee and briefed the board. Board has been briefed on this. As a reminder, there's detailed information that's been provided in prior meetings on each of these items. The first item on this list for community colleges, institution share of salary increase. The governor had recommended and the General Assembly approved funding for a 3% salary pool at each institution. As is the state's financial practice, they fund about 60% of the total cost of that salary increase. So this 1.7% increase in student revenue receipts would be required to fund out the remainder of that 3% salary pool at each of our colleges. The next line, in terms of inflation, we look at non-personnel spend and attempt to address a portion of that, not fully address, but address a portion of that. The index that we use is the Higher Education Price Index. For the last year or so, it has tracked relatively close to the CPI, with the number being about 1% or so. So an 0.8% in increase in student revenues would fund 80% of the projected inflation impact on non-personnel spend. We've also added a small load of 0.1% to allow institutions to begin ramping up to serve the Tennessee Reconnect students that will be coming to our campuses not this fall, but next fall. But this is an opportunity, a small allocation of funds to allow them to begin their planning activities and support those planning activities over the next year as they prepare to serve the adult population that we expect will be arriving on our campuses in a year out. The next slide is same information for TCATs. Salary increase amount 1.4%, a little bit less than it is for colleges. Their fixed costs due to primarily to their equipment load is a little higher at 1.1%. And then the Tennessee Reconnect is a uniform amount that we've suggested. So in both cases, we're looking at a 2.6% increase in student revenues to accomplish the three purposes that are outlined. The next piece of this is a table. I apologize somewhat for the busyness of the table, but those student revenue increases have to be translated into per credit hour charges. So to explain the table you're looking at the top, undergraduates, in-state, out-of-state, the columns across the top, the current rates. So an in-state student at a community college pays $156 per credit hour for the first 12 hours. And then for hours over 12, they pay a supplemental amount of $31 per hour. For 2017-18, the recommendation would be that that number go up by $4, the base rate. It would go from $156 to $160 per hour, and the supplemental rate or hours over the 12-hour base would go from 31 to 32. So you can see that's a 2.6% increase in the base rate and a little over 3.2 in that supplemental rate. The rest of the table works the same way. Adjustments to out-of-state students characterized in the same way, with adjustments that are, at least for the base hours, are a little higher than they are for in-state students. Also including the rate in there for the Regents Online Degree Program, that is the central office's collaborative, coordinated across the system. This is the add-on for, in addition to the underlying maintenance fee a student would pay. The rate for those online hours would go up by $2. The E-rate for undergraduate students, a word of explanation there. E-rate is an online rate, an alternate online rate that is only permitted for students who are physically located outside the state of Tennessee. They cannot have a physical presence in Tennessee. This rate was established several years ago. In looking at online programs around the U.S., we had become price uncompetitive. So the concept here was for those students that are out of state, if they're in South Dakota and we have a program that they're interested in, is to make it to their benefit to participate in that program with us. The last line item here is dual enrollment. Several years ago, the system made a commitment to establish a charge for dual enrollment students, a uniform charge across the system at all 13 colleges that equates to basically $500 a semester for dual enrollment students. We agreed to freeze that rate for 3 years. Next year will be the last of that 3 years, so this committee and the board over the next 12 months would think about what that rate needs to be moving forward. But currently that rate is set so that it equals the dual enrollment grant available through the scholarship program. Maybe before I move on, are there any I've tried to go through maybe in too much detail, any questions on those proposed rates? If not, Mr. Chair and members, the next page is on the TCAT rate. The TCAT's, it's a trimester rate. Again, we're looking at a 2.6% increase there. $30 a trimester, roughly $90 a year would be the increase indicated. The next chart, pretty graph that credit goes to, as usual, Associate Vice Chancellor Renee Stewart. This is a graph that outlines for you the total increase and then breaks it down into its component parts. How much of this graphically is presented by Tennessee Reconnect versus the cost of living or personnel cost, the fixed cost adjustment, and mandatory fee changes are added there. You'll see that Columbia State is the only institution with a mandatory fee change, so their total increase in student revenues, this is not rates, but student revenues would be about 3.5%. The next table, Mr. Chair and members, summarizes the impact on a full-time student, a student taking 30 hours annually. This would be an in-state student, and it combines the maintenance fee and mandatory fee. So based on the recommendation that is before you, if you look over in column H, the total increase for a student on an annual basis would be $102 at all of our colleges except Columbia State. It would be $146 at Columbia State. At TCATS, that would be a $90 increase. You can see the percentage increases are pretty uniform at 2.4% on the college side, with 3.5% at the Columbia State Community College. And then for TCATS, it would be a 2.5% increase in those rates. I'll pause there to see if there are any questions, Mr. Chair.
Any questions or comments? Please
If
proceed.
not, Mr. Chair, again, this material summarizes what you have seen in your board materials. The recommendations that the staff is putting before you today are to approve the recommended mandatory fee change at Columbia State as illustrated on slide 9 and within the transmittal, and to approve the recommended maintenance fee and tuition rates presented in the transmittal and shown on slides 14 and 15 that we just reviewed. With that, Mr. Chair, this item requires a roll call vote if the committee chooses to act. With that, I'll stand for further questions.
Thank you, Chancellor Sims. Members of the committee, you have heard the report on maintenance and mandatory fees and tuition recommendations. I will ask once again, are there any questions regarding the report that we just received? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve the recommended maintenance and mandatory fees and tuitions?
I so move.
Moved by Regent Prescott, second by Regent Griscom. As Vice Chancellor Sims indicated, this item does require a roll call vote. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll?
Regent Duckett,
Aye.
Regent Griscom. Regent Hatch,
Aye.
Regent Prescott. Aye. Regent Smith. The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. The final agenda item is the approval of funding for operations for fiscal year 2016-17 and 2017-18. I would note for the members that this is the first year we will consider university budgets under the Focus Act. Since under this act, our standard of review is different for universities, I have asked that staff present these items in a manner where we can act separately on the university's budget. With that, I would call again on Vice Chancellor Sims to review the materials for the budgets for the community colleges, TCATS, and the system office.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and that's a great reminder to persons. Unlike past presentations, the tables that you will review in just a moment and the graphs represent just colleges, TCATS, and the system office with separate material presented that is really geared toward our standard of review for universities. With that, just as background, the action that we'll ask for today are really approval of two budgets. Although it occurs at one time, you consider two budgets. The first one will be the estimated budget for 16-17. This is essentially the last of three budgets that we look at on an annual basis. It is the budget that takes into account both the maintenance fee increases that were adopted this time last year, as well as different grant levels of activity that have taken place over this fiscal year, as well as enrollment adjustments and expenses related to enrollment changes over the past year. The proposed budget, which is the second budget that you'll deal with, is a budget for next fiscal year. It's the initial legal operating authority for your institutions. The reason, I should say as background, the reason we deal with three budgets is when we begin a year, we really don't have a firm feel on what enrollment will be either in the fall or the spring of the year. And as a result, do not have a firm feel for the revenues that institutions will receive or the expense side in terms of serving whatever that enrolled population might be. So this is the initial, the proposed is the initial budget. We move forward with it based upon what our best estimates of enrollment changes might be, but with the knowledge that they will change later this year when you consider the October revised budgets. First pie charts here, again, these are considerably different than you would have seen last year with the universities included. This is where we receive funds from and how those funds are used. The purple piece, fees and appropriations, again, state appropriations, maintenance fees, tuition, mandatory fees, large driver of financing of the system. Over 63% of what we receive is from fees and appropriations. It pays for the full range of activities at our institutions, ranging from instruction to certain scholarship activities, maintenance and operation in terms of plant operation, student services, academic support, things such as libraries, et cetera. Sales, services, and others, those are service assessments, investment income, and private gifts. Unlike the university sector, the sales, services, and other are not a significant component of budgets at community colleges and TCATs. Those dollars, though, generally are unrestricted and can be used for, again, to support the broad range of activities that our institutions engage in. The other two pieces of the pie, restricted funds, largely come from federal and state student assistance, things such as Pell Grants, the lottery scholarships, et cetera. Grants, endowments, basically anything coming from outside the institution where the donor has restricted use. It's an external restriction on the use of funds. They fall into this category. And then auxiliary funds, again, is a pretty substantial difference if you were looking at universities with their substantial housing and dining operations. For our colleges and TCATs, there are bookstore operations and relatively minor food service operations at most of the campuses. These auxiliary funds are designed to be in large part self-supporting, so fees and charges are supposed to support the full cost of the operation of those auxiliaries. First table, lots of numbers here. This is the revenue side that takes a look at the broad revenues of the system for both the estimated budget on the left-hand side and the proposed budget on the middle, and then a difference between those two. So basically the budget we believe we'll finish the year with compared to what we are moving into the next fiscal year with. State appropriations, we'll cover this in just a moment, so while you'll note that there's a 2% decrease there, there's an explanation for that I'll get to in a moment. Other than that, the budget is relatively static in terms of the revenue side, a small increase, 1% in terms of maintenance fees, mandatory fees, basically flat, as are other fees. Sales and services are down about 6%, a little less than $2 million. Restricted activity, again, is down about $7 million, about 2%, and auxiliaries in that 2% range. So in terms of revenues, about $13.5 million difference between those 2 years. In terms of state appropriation, the reconciliation there is in that non-recurring area. The system office last year received a state appropriation of $28.7 million, non-recurring, to support the Shared Services Initiative. So that is funding that was in the estimated budget that will not be in the proposed budget. So once you make that adjustment, the funding improvements of $10 million are related to the outcome funding recommended by the governor, formula outcome number recommended that was approved by the legislature, the employer share for group insurance fund premiums, and the 3% salary pool funding from the state gets you to the $321 million, which again is a slight decrease from last year, but wholly attributable to that non-recurring item. In terms of the expense side, probably should say, a departure here. I told Renee Stewart earlier today that anytime I ask her to change a presentation, I really wish she would tell me to stop doing that. Added a chart here because I thought it would be instructive for the committee, so I'll leave it to my successor to negotiate with Renee whether it stays in or not. We thought it would be interesting, though, for you to see from a revenue standpoint, since we are now a system focused on colleges and TCATs, what the revenue picture looks like in terms of support for each of those sectors. What you'll note pretty clearly, appropriations are a greater share of funding for TCATs. That would have been true historically and is still true today. That is offset in terms of fees and tuition are a larger share of funding at our colleges, at our community colleges, than they are at TCATs. The restricted picture is roughly the same. Auxiliary funds, there's a small difference there. Sales, services, and others. Just a reminder, at TCATs we have certain live work that is done, in terms of a person can come in with a vehicle that can be worked on as live work, and there are charges assessed there. So that is not necessarily the case at many of our colleges. So kind of a comparison there. I think the big takeaway, I hope the takeaway for you is that within your two sectors, they are funded differently in terms of particularly the split between appropriation and state funds and tuition and fees. I'll move then to the spend side. This is expenditures by function. Instruction continues to be the largest share of what we spend funds on. Right at 50% of our spend is there. Institutional support is the second largest category. Operations and maintenance follows that, as well as student services. So total spend of $688 million in the proposed and $666 million in the estimated budget. You can see the percentage changes on the far right-hand side, the largest percent change being in the instruction area. A different snapshot is how we use the money, the purpose for which it's spent. You can see that in virtually every year, right at 75% of our total spend is in human capital, salaries and benefits for employees. As with many organizations, our human capital walks out the door every evening, so ensuring that we appropriately compensate and keep them is a continual challenge at the campuses. In terms of other operating expenses, basically a status quo budget, a little bit of a decrease in the operating there. On a percent basis, a pretty substantial increase in capital outlay. This is the category where minor renovations at campuses and minor renovations being painting a classroom, et cetera, will be accounted for. The larger number here relates to equipment that is to be capitalized. The vast majority of this increase is accounted for at Nashville State, where they are equipping a new healthcare services lab, or proposed to in the upcoming year, and that accounts for the large increase there on both a dollar and percentage basis. The next item, during every year, institutions transfer funds between their unrestricted E&G, which we've been looking at, and various plant funds or reserve funds. Retirement of indebtedness, those are transfers, mandatory transfers to service debt. That is a small item in the community college and TCAP budget. It largely relates to performance contracts at our institutions. Those contracts being energy efficiency contracts where we enter it into debt and are repaying it basically from energy savings that resulted from retrofitting lights and control systems, et cetera. Unexpended plant, you see, those are transfers from unrestricted to unexpended plant for purposes of future capital or future campus fiscal improvements. There's a pretty substantial decrease there. Renewal and replacement, that item is, that again, looks like a substantial decrease, but is accounted for largely by the system office, where we have moved the appropriation for the shared services initiative. That $28.7 million has been moved from unrestricted E&G into our renewal and replacement account as a holding place against which the shared service initiative implementation expenditures would be accounted for. So we're moving from about $59 million of expected transfers in the current year to a little over $12.8 in the next fiscal year. Mr. Chair, kind of funds available, funds utilized, and where we end up. You'll note we start with a beginning fund balance, unrestricted fund balance of a little over $130 million among all of our institutions. We recognize $683 million worth of revenue in the unrestricted account. Expenditures between transfers and expenses totaling $699. This again is in 17-18. Next year, $15.7 million deficit there. A couple of notes on that. The transfers are planned transfers. Those transfers do not take place if resources aren't available to transfer. Also, what this reflects is excluding the transfer activity, a relatively minor spending down of beginning fund balances. Auxiliaries, again, revenues, expenses, balanced at a net increase of 1.1 or net income of 1.1. So in total, revenues of 693, expenses of 695, plus the 12.8 million in transfers, total 708. If this budget worked exactly as people planned it, we would see about a $14.5 million decrease in decrease in ending fund balance at the end of next year. Every institution, though, based upon the budget submitted, would end the year with a positive ending fund balance under the proposed budgets. Next item is your personnel side in terms of positions. You can see a total there of 46,640 total positions. The vast majority of our positions are in the unrestricted activities. Of the 6,200 grand total positions in unrestricted, 5,100 are in faculty positions. Faculty positions faculty positions represent 41% or 2,500. I was reading down my community college line, pardon me. So 41% of our positions are in faculty, 33% in clerical support. Those numbers are roughly the same as they would have been a year ago when we looked at that. We see about a total of 100 or so new positions. Of those 100 or so new positions, most of those positions are faculty positions that are proposed as part of this budget. Mr. Chair, wrapping it up, again, I probably should have started off saying that within your board materials, there are 30-some pages of details of institutional budgets and various ways to slice and dice. What we've gone through here is a high-level summary of that. The table that is in front of you encapsulates those recommendations or those budgets for the colleges, TCATs, and system office. They are presented to you today as being consistent with board policy and consistent with resources available. The recommendation, our staff recommendation, is that the committee approve these, and as part of that approval, that the chancellor would be authorized to take actions necessary to implement the budgets that have been presented to you today. With that, Mr. Chair, I'll be glad to try to answer questions you might have.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor Sims. Are there any questions of him at this stage? If not, we have heard the recommendations as it relates to the estimated and proposed budgets for colleges, TCATs, and the system office. Is there a motion to approve that recommendation? So moved by Regent Griscom. Is there a second? Second by Regent Smith. Madam Secretary, this requires a roll call. Would you call the roll, please?
Regent Duckett,
Aye.
Regent Griscom, Regent Hatch,
Aye.
Regent Prescott. Aye. Regent Smith. The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Let me now ask Vice Chancellor Sims to summarize the recommendations on the estimated and proposed budgets for the universities.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. As you've noted, we have a new standard of review under the FOCUS Act that is for university budgets that is largely centered on ensuring that universities continue to have budgets that are compliant with various debt covenants or bond covenants that the system entered into on behalf of the universities when they were part of the system. This committee and board adopted a policy in March to govern the board's consideration of university budgets. The university budgets have been reviewed by your staff in accordance with that policy. The table that's in front of you summarizes that review. I think it's important for you to understand that we, in reviewing those budgets, we have found that they meet the debt service coverage requirements that the board has entered into on their behalf. That covenant is that they will have revenues of at least 2 times their debt service requirement. You can see in the table, we illustrate 2 actual years and 2 the budget, estimated budget and proposed budget, and in all cases, they substantially exceed the coverage ratio. We also have an obligation, as we pass this along to the Higher Education Commission, to ensure that their budgets are consistent internally and that they're mathematically correct. We have reviewed for those purposes. We have also asked each of the institutions to certify their compliance with the various bond covenants that the system office again entered into on their behalf in the past. An example of that is if there was a facility constructed on their campus that has debt outstanding on it, tax exempt debt, and there's a change in use of that facility that might bring into question the continued exemptness of that debt, they have an affirmative obligation to communicate that to us and us to the school bond authority. The check marks in the far right-hand column of this table evidence that we have reviewed their certifications and that they have certified that they are in compliance with all of those bond covenants. Also important to note that we, except as we are noting here, that we have not exercised any judgment as to their budgets otherwise. We believe it was clear the purpose of the Focus Act was that our role was to review for compliance with debt issues and to raise any questions that might be raised in terms of their ability to fulfill their debt obligations. Otherwise, we do not peer into their budgets. With that, Mr. Chairman, I should note that detailed information on the university budgets, as has historically been presented, is also included in your materials. If their budgets are approved, we will submit those directly to the Higher Education Commission along with the budgets that you've approved for colleges, TCATs, and the system office. With that overview, Mr. Chair, I'll be glad to answer questions if there are any. Otherwise, this is properly before you for action.
Thank you, Vice Chancellor Sims. You have heard the overview provided by the Vice Chancellor. Are there any questions regarding it? Hearing none, it would be appropriate for us to have a motion to approve the recommended, estimated, and proposed budgets for the universities.
I so move.
Moved by Regent Prescott. Is there a second? Second by Regent Smith. This item does in fact require a roll call vote. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll?
Regent Duckett?
Aye.
Regent Griscom? Regent Hatch?
Aye.
Regent Prescott?
Aye.
Regent Smith? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. This completes the agenda today. I want to personally and professionally thank the members of the committee for the effort that they and time that they have given towards working on this project. A lot of time has gone into it, and if there is, I would ask, is there any other business to come before the committee? If not, without objection, I declare this meeting adjourned.
Of the work that had gone into getting us to today. So thank you to our finance and business operation folks, and to Vice Chancellor Sims, who noted that human capital walks out the door every year, and we'll be talking about that more tomorrow with Dale's impending retirement. We will now call forward the members of the Personnel and Compensation Committee that consist of Regent Smith, Regent Green, Regent Markham, Regent Shockey, Regent Varlin, and Regent White, who I understand is en route. Thank you all. from Murfreesboro. So welcome, and we are pleased to have her on board with us. Thank you.
Good afternoon. I'm calling the Committee on Personnel and Compensation of the Tennessee Board of Regents to order. Madam Secretary, would you please call the roll?
Regent Green.
Here.
Regent Markham.
Here.
Regent Shockey.
Here.
Regent Smith.
Here.
Regent White. Regent Varlin. You have a quorum, Mr.
Thank you.
Chairman.
Our first item of business is our consent agenda. The committee has previously reviewed the following items: tenure and promotion recommendations at the community colleges, tenure and promotion recommendations at the Tennessee Colleges of Applied Technology, review and approval of faculty promotion increases, and institutional requests for amended compensation plans. Materials presented under the consent agenda have been provided to all members of the board. After your review of these materials, does anyone see cause to remove a particular item from the consent agenda for further discussion or action? Silence means we're okay, I think. So, this item requires a roll call vote. Madam Secretary, if you'll call the roll.
Regent Green.
Aye.
Regent Markham.
Aye.
Regent Shockey.
Aye.
Regent Smith.
Aye.
Regent Varlin. The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. Our second item, the committee will review and consider for approval the proposed system compensation strategies. And I'd like to call on Vice Chancellor Sims, please.
Apologize, Mr. Chairman, I'm getting my final instructions. Mr. Chair, every year, subsequent to legislative activity, as we noted during the Finance Committee meeting, the General Assembly and Governor provided funding for a 3% salary pool. Subsequent to that, we engage in conversation with the leadership at each of your campuses about how best to meet the needs of those campuses with this salary pool, this 3% salary pool of money. What is before you today is the result of those conversations. There's always, I should say, I'll use the term tension, but it's not unproductive tension. There's always a good conversation about should we have a consistent policy where everyone does the same thing across the broad system, or how much flexibility do individual institutions have in terms of addressing what they believe are the most important compensation issues on their campus. In most years, we come to a conclusion as a staff and recommend to the board that campuses be given some degree of flexibility so that they can address the specific needs on their campus. The plan this year is similar to past plans in that regard. Again, we start with a 3% salary pool. The recommended strategy would be that every institution as of July 1 would grant a 1.7% salary increase to all active employees, as noted within your materials. The 1.7% would be paid effective July 1. 1.7%, the rationale behind that is essentially the level of salary increase that was supported with state appropriation. With the remaining part of that pool, the other 1.3%, so to speak, we would propose that you give institutions flexibility to request how those dollars be spent on their campuses. The items or the areas where we would suggest that they be given that flexibility would be to grant a supplemental COLA of 1.3%. For campuses that elected that option, that would total a 3% COLA on their campus. We would also suggest or recommend that campuses be allowed to propose use of that pool of money to address their compensation plan. As you are aware, there's a compensation plan for every institution where we attempt to set salaries, that the institution attempts to set salaries as close to the market for those positions. In some cases, those plans are not fully funded, meaning that they're still below their market targets. This would give them, if accepted by the committee and board, this would give them flexibility to use a portion of this money to address their compensation plan. And then lastly, faculty promotions. If these dollars are needed to fully implement faculty promotions, that would be a request that could be made. As to the lastly, locally funded adjustments. We will have some institutions that will have resources locally that would like to do more than the 3%. Historically, we have granted them the ability to request that of the board. I will note for members that are new that the Personnel Committee traditionally meets during the September board meeting, receives recommendations from the staff on these matters, and then the board acts at the September meeting on those recommendations relative to request of institutions. In terms of process, again, the 1.7 that we're suggesting or recommending be system-wide would be effective July 1. We would also recommend that for those institutions that have expressed an interest in using their flexibility money to fund out a full 3%, that this action also incorporate permission to do so that those adjustments could be made at those institutions effective July 1. For those institutions that wish to have broader flexibility, essentially want to use it for either their compensation plan or for faculty promotions, the process would be that they would submit those requests to your system staff in mid-August. System staff would analyze those, would make recommendations, and present those to the board at its committee and board meeting in September. Those adjustments then would be effective with local money. Those adjustments would be effective on dates recommended by the committee and approved by the board. The 1.3% piece, in any case, would always be effective July 1, so there could be some retroactivity involved in those adjustments. In working with your institutions, we have the institutions on the left part of the chart are ones that have expressed an interest in using the full allocation for a COLA. The institutions in the box on the right, Jackson State, Northeast, Roane, and Volunteer State, have asked for permission to submit a request on how to use this 1.3% allocation during the next board cycle. So you've got, including the system office and TCATs, you have, math escapes me at this point in time, 9 institutions plus the system office system office and TCATs that would implement a 3% COLA effective July 1 if this recommendation is accepted. So, Mr. Chair, members of the committee, that's the recommendation that was embodied in your materials and is hopefully summarized in some organized way here. Approval of a system-wide increase of 1.7 on July 1. Approval of the supplemental 1.3% COLA effective July 1 for those institutions that have requested such action. And then authorization for those remaining institutions to submit proposals on how to distribute the remaining amount that this committee and the board would consider during its September meeting. Mr. Chair, I've gone over that relatively quickly. I'd be glad to try to clarify or answer questions if there are any at this point in time.
Okay, thank you, Vice Chancellor Sims. You've heard the report by Vice Chancellor Sims. Pending any questions, is there a motion to approve the compensation strategies?
So moved.
Is there a second? Thank you, Regent Barlow, and thank you, Regent Markham. I have a motion. Having a motion and a second, if there's no further discussion, this requires a roll call vote.
Regent Green?
Aye.
Regent Markham?
Aye.
Regent Shockey?
Aye.
Regent Smith?
Aye.
Regent Barlin?
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously.
Thank you. The third item on our agenda, the committee will consider the approval of the Executive Incentive Compensation Plan payments. Vice Chancellor Sims.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, members. Background on this item, if I may. The Executive Performance Incentive Plan was a board initiative, as I recall, 3 or so years ago. It was currently your presidents, directors, and chancellor, or soon to be presidents, and chancellor, their salaries are targeted at 90% of what we judge to be the market average salary for presidents of similar institutions. So we essentially have set a salary base that is 10% below market. The incentive plan was designed to allow institutional leaders to earn a non-recurring, basically one-time incentive payment on an annual basis that equaled that 10% difference. So if the market is $100,000 for a position, one of these leadership positions, their recurring salary is $90,000, they can earn up to $10,000 through this incentive plan. Using that illustration of that $10,000, $8,500 of that, or 85% of it, is tied directly to specific metrics. For college presidents, it's tied directly to their performance, their institution's performance on the outcome funding formula. So if their institution does well in terms of growing the number of degrees, the workforce development hours, retention of students, et cetera, the 11 metrics that the Higher Education Commission has established for colleges, then those presidents can earn an incentive payment based upon that performance. For TCAT directors, there are 5 specific metrics. Their formula is different, but those metrics are tied to things such as increasing service, increasing enrollment, fundraising activity, expanded offerings, et cetera. So they are aligned with productivity of those institutions. On an annual basis, we bring to you recommendations on the merit-based adjustments subsequent to the formula being adopted by the Higher Education Commission. We have before you in your board materials, there's a schedule of institutions and incentive payments, metric incentive payments for leaders of institutions. Those adjustments, there are 5 in the community college sector that total $30,317. There are 22 in the TCAT sector that total $54,818, or $85,000 in total. Again, these are the metric-based only. They have been reviewed in accordance with the plan adopted by this board, and those adjustments are recommended for your approval today. Mr. Chair, I'll be glad to answer questions if there are any.
Questions? Okay, thank you. You've heard the report by Vice Chancellor Sims. Is there a motion to approve the executive incentive compensation plan payments?
So move.
Thank you, Regent Markham. Is there a second?
Second.
Thank you, Regent Bartlett. Having a motion and a second, if there's no further discussion, this item also requires a roll call vote.
Regent Green.
Aye.
Regent Markham. Aye. Regent Shockey.
Aye.
Regent Smith.
Aye.
Regent Barlin.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
Okay, thank you. Our fourth item on our agenda, the committee will consider the President Emeritus contracts. I'd like to call on General Counsel Moody, please.
TCA 836-714 sets forth the standards for compensation for presidents emeritus. Requires that they perform services to the institution for which they serve as president emeritus, and that they report annually on those services that they provided in the previous year in order to be eligible to renew their annual contract as president emeritus. This year we have, in your materials, there are the reports and the proposed contracts for 9 presidents emeritus. And if anybody has any questions about any of those contracts, I'm happy to answer them.
All right, thank you. Any questions? In light of the current situation at Northeast State, I want to make a recommendation to the committee. The materials presented to us for consideration include 9 requests for President Emeritus contracts. In reviewing the list, I would like to propose that the contracts for Dr. Bill Locke and Dr. Wade Powers be removed to help reduce some of the financial strain on the institution's budget. Dr. Locke and Dr. Powers have been contacted and they are in agreement with this decision. We certainly appreciate the work and support they have given to Northeast State for many years and through their career. So does anyone object to this recommendation? No. Hearing none, we will proceed. Madam Secretary, let the record show that the committee is recommending approval of 7 President Emeritus contracts.
So those 7 would be the 9 proposed without Dr. Locke and Dr. Powers.
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. Do I have a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Regent Barlin. A second? Do I hear a second?
Second.
Thank you, Regent Green. Having a motion and a second, if there's no further discussion, this item also requires a roll call vote.
Regent Green.
Aye.
Regent Markham. Aye. Regent Shockey.
Aye.
Regent Smith.
Aye.
Regent Barlin.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously.
All right, thank you. Our fifth item on our agenda, the committee will consider the recommendation for appointments reporting to the Chancellor. I'd like to call on Chancellor Tidings.
Thank you, Chairman Smith and members of the committee. I am asking for 2 approvals today, one for the Executive Vice Chancellor for Policy and Strategy, which will serve the Board of Regents system in 2 areas by providing leadership and support as a direct report to the Chancellor on all aspects regarding the Board of Regents. And this new position will lead policy and research efforts as the Board executes its strategic vision, serving the needs of our students, institutions, in Tennessee. I recommend that Dr. Russ Deaton be appointed Executive Vice Chancellor for Policy and Strategy. Dr. Deaton is currently the Deputy Executive Director and Leader of Policy and Data Division at the Tennessee Higher Education Commission, where he has served Tennessee students and state government for 17 years. He began his distinguished career at THEC as a research analyst in academic affairs and was promoted to the following positions during his tenure at THEC: Director of Facilities Planning, Director of Physical Policy Analysis, Associate Executive Director, Fiscal Policy and Administration, Deputy Executive Director, and Leader of Policy and Data Division. Dr. Deaton also served as the Interim Executive Director before taking on his current role at the Commission. His knowledge of and relationships with THEC, the University of Tennessee, locally governed institutions, the Tennessee Independent Colleges and University Association, and the Board of Regents are invaluable to this position. An integral part of being successful as Executive Vice Chancellor for Policy and Strategy will be extensive experience and knowledge in higher education research and assessment, providing our system with data, analysis, and research to support the initiatives currently in place and our initiatives to come. Dr. Deaton also possesses the leadership and experience in the research and assessment field, along with success in leading and managing a support staff. I recommend an effective date of July 1, 2017, so that Dr. Deaton can begin this important work for our system. The second recommendation I bring before the committee today is for the appointment of Dr. Heidi Lemming as Interim Vice Chancellor for Student Success. Dr. Lemming is currently the Associate Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs and has also served as the Assistant Vice Chancellor for Student Affairs at the Board of Regents. Prior to Dr. Limmer joining the system office, she served as Vice President for Student Affairs and Assistant Vice President for Student Life in the Georgia higher education system. The experience Dr. Lemming has in the oversight of the professional staff and student functions at our community and technical colleges, strategic planning, advisor to the Student Government President's Council, and initiatives focusing on student retention and academic success gives her the unique advantage to best serve our students and the board as Interim Vice Chancellor for Student Success. I recommend an effective date of July 1 to seamlessly continue this essential work for student success. Thank you, Chairman Smith and members of the committee, for your consideration.
Thank you, Chancellor. You've heard the report and recommendation by Chancellor Tidings. Pending any questions, is there a motion to approve the appointments to the Chancellor?
So moved.
Second.
Thank you. Having a motion and a second, if there's no further discussion, this item requires a voice vote. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Sure.
I think Dr. Deaton and Dr. Lemming are both in the audience today. If they would please stand and be recognized for this important work they'll be doing with the system.
We do thank you for your work. Our sixth and final item on the
Mr.
agenda, the committee will hear an informational report on equal opportunity efforts in the...
Before we proceed, Mr. Chairman, it's been brought to my attention that we may have not noted properly a motion on the first item on the agenda, which was the approval of the consent agenda, and I was wondering if anybody noted who made the motion and the second to approve the consent agenda before we move on.
I may have missed that.
That's okay. So if we could go back
Sure.
and take that matter up again.
Okay, that had to do with the review and consider for approval of the proposed system compensation strategies. Just
No,
to
the
refresh your
consent, it was the
Consent agenda.
very first
Number
item
one. Oh, the
on the
first one, I'm
agenda,
sorry.
which was the motion, which was
Oh, for the
approval of
consent.
the consent agenda,
Right.
which included all the tenure and promotion items.
Right, I'm sorry. Yes, if there's, if there are no questions with respect to the consent agenda, do I hear a motion?
So moved.
Thank you, Regent Barlin. Is there a second?
A second.
Thank you, Regent Green. Do we need to go through a roll call vote again?
We will,
Okay,
just to be safe.
all right. This item requires a roll call vote. You'll call the roll?
Regent Green,
Aye.
Regent Markham,
Aye.
Regent Shockey,
Aye.
Regent Smith,
Aye.
Regent Varlin.
Aye.
The motion carries unanimously. I apologize for any contribution I had to that.
No, thank you for keeping us straight. Our sixth and final item, we will hear an informational report on equal opportunity efforts in the system office and campus from Vice Chancellor Thompson.
Good afternoon, and thanks for the opportunity to present this item to you today. Normally, we would cover this item in orientations for new regents and new presidents, but with the new landscape and the new personnel committee, we thought this would be a good opportunity to give you some background today about these efforts. The principles of equity and diversity have long been a part of the fabric and the culture at TBR, and the equity and diversity offices or initiatives are housed within the Organizational Effectiveness Office at TBR. Now, when we say equity, we mean compliance with federal, state, laws and regulations, and TBR policies that are related to equal opportunity and affirmative action, and those are primarily our employment practices, which is why we thought it appropriate to bring it to the Personnel Committee today. Our diversity issues are much broader, and we're going to bring those discussions to you at a later board meeting. But today we wanted to talk about equity. And I'm going to turn it over now to Ms. Bobby Porter, who's our Director of Equity and Diversity Initiatives.
Thank you, and it is my pleasure to come before this committee today to talk a little bit more about what we do in our office. So I want to speak to you specifically, and Vice Chancellor Thompson's already giving us a great working definition of what equity is, how we regard it in our office. So what I want to do is talk about what is captured within the broader context of equity, what is included in the broader scope of equity. Within equity, we have equal opportunity. So what do we mean when we say equal opportunity? Well, equal opportunity, again, refers to those federal and state regulations, some that you're going to be familiar with. That's your Title VI, your Title VII, your ADA, which applies to disability, ADEA, which applies to age. That's what we're talking about when we mean equal opportunity, or those federal regulations, But since we're only talking about the employment context, we're not talking about Title IX, which is so popular and so many people are talking about these days. So within our office, equal opportunity and those federal regulations, those are those applicable regulations there. For us at TBR, equal opportunity means that it's broad and within the context of effectiveness within our office. We seek to eliminate barriers. We seek to eliminate those practices, whether they're intentional or otherwise, that have the effect of excluding individuals based on protected categories. As it refers to equal opportunity, our office is a resource in a couple of ways. One, we ensure that whenever we engage in any new employment practices, specifically when we hire, those practices result in a very broad and diverse pool of qualified candidates. We also act as a resource when we help to ensure that all of our employees have the opportunity to exceed in their employment within the TBR system. So that's what we're talking about when we say equal opportunity. Also within the broader context of equity, there is affirmative action, which all of us, I believe, are well familiar with. But let me give you a definition of what we mean by affirmative action within the context of equity and within our office. Affirmative action simply means intentionality and efforts to ensure and encourage participation and representation of diverse groups in the TBR workforce. Again, we're only talking about it as it applies to employment, not in the broader context that you've heard it otherwise, perhaps. But when we're talking about affirmative action, a little later in the slides, I'll give you specific ways about our efforts under affirmative action. So why is this important? Why is the work that we do in our office, one more, why is it important overall to the system office? Well, in order to answer that, let's first talk about the difference between equality, or the results of equality, versus equity. If you'll look at the graphic in front of you, this is a great depiction of the outcome of equality. With equality assumes that there is one remedy that will work for everyone. It's very broad. It's the one way that we do things. We give everyone the same thing at the time. So if you look at the graphic here, you'll see that there's an issue with people wanting to look at the game over the fence. Very easy. And then the remedy is give everyone this box so they can see the game. But as you can see, there's still someone who's left out. That's the outcome of equality. So let's contrast that against equity. Equity, as opposed to what we get with equality, it shifts into doing things in a very intentional way. When we engage in equity, we're essentially leveling the playing field for all. So let's look at I hope that's not me making that noise. I hope I'm not touching something that's doing that. Maybe I am. Sorry about that. Okay, so let's get back to it. So with equity, it's very intentional, and we can refer to the graphic again. Rather than giving everyone the same support, we're looking at what each individual needs. We're looking at it in a very intentional way, and we can see the result or the outcome of equity. In this context, we have that same remedy that we were looking at before, but instead of just giving the same thing to everyone, we're giving people what they need. That's the difference between equality and equity, and that's the work of our office. So the question becomes, how do we do this? Well, within our office, there are 4 major prongs that we do, specifically the work that I do with equity and diversity. First, we offer training on those equal opportunity regulations that I spoke to earlier. We offer training to our employees on the overall federal and state regulations, but we also offer on the related TBR policies. We also offer best practices on how every employee can do their part to comply with those federal laws and regulations and our system policies. As it relates to advising, we advise hiring managers throughout the entire hiring process. That includes reviewing their recruiting plans, helping them advertise their positions in a way that's going to reach a very broad and diverse qualified pool of candidates. We also do the same work for our campuses in their executive searches. We review those for equity as well. We also advise search committees on equitable interviewing practices, as well as how they can assess individual candidates to ensure that it's done in an equitable way and in compliance with our policies. On at least a quarterly basis, we also convene our campus equity officers to talk to them about updates as it relates to equal opportunity and serve as a resource to them whenever they need. Lastly, under advising, we support those campus equity officers. Excuse me, I kind of alluded to this before, but we support them wherever they need it, and we also conduct investigations when there is a need on campus that goes beyond what they can do there or what that campus equity officer can do. As it relates to monitoring, we again, for the campuses, we review the equity of their executive hiring practices to ensure they comply not only with the laws, but with our internal policies. We also review their annual compliance plans. Each campus, as well as the system office, has a responsibility to report out to a state agency, and they also report directly to the system office on a number of equal opportunity laws, so we review those. Lastly, as it relates to reporting within the system office, each year, and I'm going to get back to affirmative action, we engage in our affirmative action plan. In that process, we're essentially assessing the diversity of the TBR workforce. We're identifying any gaps in diversity. So we're looking at who is out there that could be employed, the diversity of those around us, and how that compares to those who are in our workforce. If there are any gaps, we determine a plan on how we can address that and remedy those issues. And again, that's used on that's done on an annual basis, and we use that plan throughout the year to inform our equity reviews. As it relates to reporting as well, I spoke to it. There is the Title VI implementation plan that our office is responsible for compiling for the entire system. So that we do on an annual basis. And with Title VI, we're looking at race, color, and national origin specifically. For all of these federal and state laws, as well as those policies, for each of those federal and state laws, there's a related TBR policy. Right now, in the new post-focus world at TBR, those will be reviewed, and we expect some revisions that we believe will come before this committee, and we'll be happy to come back and answer any questions at that point. That concludes what I had. I want to open it for any questions. I'll be up to the side if you do.
All right, well, thank you for that report, and certainly thank you for the work that you all do to ensure that we ensure equal equality as we go about our work with the system. The Chancellor has another comment.
I do. There are 2 other people in the Chancellor's office that I would like to recognize this afternoon. Dr. Lynn Goodman. I think Dr. Goodman is with us. Lynn, if you would please stand and be recognized. She is now going to be the Special Assistant to the Chancellor in our office area. And also as my new Administrative Assistant, Marianne Hammonds. Marianne, if you'd please stand. So both of these ladies have joined our office suite.
Thank you, Chancellor. This concludes our agenda for the Committee on Personnel and Compensation. I certainly want to thank the committee members and the staff for your work and preparation. Do I have a motion to adjourn?
So moved.
Thank you, Regent Markham. Do I have a second? Thank you, Regent Varlin. We stand adjourned. Thank you.
I thank you, Mr. Chairman. Well done, everyone. And Chancellor, congratulations as you continue to fill out your team in such a tremendous way. So we're delighted. We're delighted. As we set up for our next committee meeting, which is Academic Policies and Programs, I would also like to recognize State Representative John Reagan, who I understand is with us today. Thank you, sir, for joining us. Much appreciated. Thank you. I would like to call now, with the Academic Policies Committee, Regent Prescott as our chair, Regents Duckett, Fitzner, Danny Varlin, who is here, and Tom White, who has not yet joined us but should be here shortly. If you all would reassemble, that would be great. Exactly.
Okay. Are we ready?
You are ready,
Are we ready? Okay. All right, I'd like to call to order the Committee on Academic Policies, Programs, and Student Life. Madam Secretary, would you call the roll?
Regent Duckett,
Here.
Regent Fitzner,
Present.
Regent Kraus, Regent McQueen, Regent Prescott,
Here.
Regent Sperling, Regent Varlin, Regent White. You have a quorum, Madam Chair.
Thank you. The first item on our agenda is the proposed program terminations, modifications, and new technical program implementations for TCAT. So to explain that item for us, I'd like to call Interim Vice Chancellor Randy Schulte to the podium.
Thank you. Chairman Prescott, members of the committee, as workforce development is at the heart of the mission of the Tennessee Colleges of Applied Technology, and we focus every day on that mission by training our students to be excellent employees and to strengthen the economic development in our communities. I am pleased to present 6 programs carefully reviewed by the Office of Academic Affairs for your consideration and approval today. 1, the implementation of a retail, hospitality, and tourism technology program at TCAT Jackson to be located at the Lexington Extension campus. 2nd, the implementation of an aesthetics technology program at TCAT Hohenwald. 3rd, the implementation of a cosmetology program at TCAT Chattanooga to be located at the Grundy County High School. 4th, the implementation of a health information management technology program at the TCAT Jackson. 5, the implementation of a certified nursing assistant program at TCAT Crossville. That's just up the mountain from here. And 6, implementation of a barbering program at TCAT Chattanooga. Chairman Prescott, these program proposals allow the Tennessee Colleges of Applied Technology to be more responsive to the needs of students, businesses, industries, and their communities. I respectfully recommend the committee's approval of these 6 proposals.
Thank you. So you've heard the recommendation of Vice Chancellor Schulte. Do I have a motion to approve?
Motion.
Thank you, Regent Vitzner. Do I have a second?
So moved.
Regent Varlin. It's been moved and seconded. Are there any questions or any discussion on this recommendation? Hearing none, this requires a voice vote, so all in favor say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. The ayes have it, and so the motion is approved. All right, the next item on the agenda is approval of new degree programs, and I'll call on Vice Chancellor Schulte again.
Thank you. Chairman Prescott, members of the committee, today I have one proposal from our community colleges to bring before you for your approval. Chattanooga State Community College proposes to establish a new Associate of Applied Science degree in nuclear medicine technology to be implemented in the fall semester 2017. Nuclear medicine technologists operate equipment that creates images of areas of a patient's body. They prepare radioactive drugs and serve all patient populations. The typical entry-level education required is the associate's degree. According to the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics, the 2016 median pay is $35.75 per hour. The proposed new degree addresses regional workforce needs and is unique in the TBR system. Chattanooga State currently offers an accredited technical certificate in nuclear medicine technology that will be embedded in the degree program. No new costs are associated with the implementation of this new degree, since resources are in place to support the existing certificate program. The proposed degree will prepare students to sit for the National Nuclear Medicine Licensure Examination offered by the American Registry of Radiologic Technologists and the Nuclear Medicine Technology Certification Board. You will note in the board materials that the architected pathway for this degree for a full-time student is to complete in 2 years, but will encompass 6 semesters, including 2 summer semesters. The program requires 69 semester hours to meet accreditation and licensure requirements. Chattanooga State projects 10 graduates annually. At this time, I will be glad to address any questions, and if there are none, I recommend approval of this new program as proposed.
Does anyone have any questions?
Do we have, how many of these do we have across the state of these programs? Do you know?
This is the very first
I
one.
thought so. I just, I didn't want to ask that and not know, but that's cool.
Yeah.
Good. That's a good job.
Any
Very
other
exciting.
I think
any
I could
other
use
questions?
that reconnect money.
Yeah, I started to say, I think I might do that when I roll.
We've had 3 people leave the audience to sign up, I think.
Okay. So if there are no other questions, do I hear a motion to approve the recommendation put forth by Interim Vice Chancellor Schulte. Moved by Regent Duckett. Is there a second?
Second.
And second by Regent Varlin. And this too requires a voice vote, so all in favor say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it, and the motion carries. So we are moving to our third and last item on this agenda, which is proposed revisions to TBR Policy 2.03.01.05, which is academic retention and readmission at the Tennessee Colleges of Applied Technology. And Interim Vice Chancellor, you still have the floor here.
Well, thank you. I am pleased, Chairman Prescott and members of the committee, to present these revisions to the academic retention and readmission policy at the Tennessee Colleges of Applied Technology 203.01.05. These revisions clarify retention standards and provide criteria for evaluating student achievement across all technical colleges. The proposed revisions were approved by the President's Council at their meeting in June. As the technical colleges move to a single instance of the Banner Student Information Systems, it is imperative to implement this policy consistently across all technical colleges. If there are any questions about this policy, I'm happy to answer them. If not, I recommend the approval of these revisions.
Any questions, Regents? All right, hearing none, do I have a motion to approve the revision to this policy?
So moved.
Moved by Regent Fitzner. Do I have a second? Thank you, Regent Duckett. It's been moved and seconded. This also requires a voice vote, so all in favor say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it, and the motion has been approved. So that concludes our agenda. I would like to thank the committee and certainly the staff. I think we recognize that this is the heart of what we do, and it's exciting to hear about new programs and changes that fit the needs of our students. So thank you very much, Vice Chancellor.
Thank you.
Having completed our business, do I have a motion to adjourn? Moved by Regent Duckett and seconded by Regent Varlin, and if there's no objection, this committee stands adjourned.
Thank you very much, Madam Chair, and to members of the Academic Policies Committee, well done. And speaking of programs that work for our students, we also offer programs that work for us, but let me remind the board you have work to do. Dr. Whaley here at Roane State has asked me to announce that our students from the massage therapy program are in the lobby. For those who would like to have a chair massage, those run until 4 p.m. So take advantage of our students' good work. Pardon? I know, you're staying right here, Regent Varlin. Work to do, my friends, but that is an exciting opportunity and a chance to meet some of our students as well. So thank you, Dr. Whaley. Since we have concluded academic policies with Regent Prescott's good leadership, I would like to call the External Affairs Committee forward for our next meeting. Regent Markham is our chair. We'll be joined by Regent Apple, Regent Griscom, Regent Green, Regents Hatch and Shockey, and I would also like to ask Regent Varlin to stay for this discussion. Thank you all.
Regent Apple. Regent Green.
Here.
Regent Griscom. Regent Hatch.
Here.
Regent Kraus. Regent Markham. Here. Regent Shockey. Regent Templeton. You have a quorum, Madam Chairman.
Thank you. We have 3 agenda items today. They are an overview of the new role of External Affairs Division, a discussion of the role of the External Affairs Unit in accordance with the Focus Act, proposed new initiatives, discussion of the committee charter. At this time, I'd like to call on Vice Chancellor Kim McCormick to give us a report on the overview of the new role of the External Affairs Division. Thank you, Kim.
Good afternoon, Chair Markham and committee members. I am pleased to announce today the Office of External Affairs has now been expanded and redefined, and I am honored to be here today leading such a fine board staff and in serving this committee. The Office of External Affairs will be comprised of the following departments: K-12 partnerships, marketing and digital media, government relations, and institutional advancement. By bringing these functional departments together, the External Affairs Division intends to better speak with one voice to make it clear that the Tennessee Board of Regents College System of Tennessee is crucial in meeting the state Drive to 55 goal and to creating a prepared workforce and economy for our state's future. This one voice can promote our campus needs and tell our successes and create partnerships in a systematic way. Before I introduce our team, though, I would like to recognize my esteemed colleague, Mr. Rick Locker, who will review his role as Chief Communications Officer, reporting directly to Chancellor Tidings, but serving as a critical member of our External Affairs team. Rick?
Thank you, Thank you, Dr. McCormick, Madam Chair Markham, and members of the committee. Just a brief, very brief word with you about my role as your communications director and how it fits into the new External Affairs Unit. Under the new org chart, I will continue to report directly to the Chancellor, but it's obvious that my responsibilities are tied closely to the new External Affairs Unit. So Dr. McCormick has invited me to participate in her weekly staff meetings. My 2 colleagues, Virginia Moreland and Matthew Gann, transferred to her staff on June 1st, but we all still work together every day. After attending her staff meetings, I believe that for the first time you will have an integrated staff for internal and external communications, which is poised to do the work that most of you have been saying we need to do since I came to TBR last July. My focus remains on media relations, media releases, and strategic communications, helping the Chancellor and you and our staff tell the great story of the opportunities that our college system offers the people of Tennessee. And of course, I'm always here when you need help with your public communications as board members. You had an extensive discussion at the board retreat in Murfreesboro in March about the need for marketing, the TCATs especially. I think that we are poised to really be able to focus on that and get that done. So Dr. McCormick will fill you in on the rest of her organization. Thank you.
So, thank you, Rick. Before I introduce this team, I do want to again thank the board and thank our Chancellor Tidings. It's her vision that is allowing us to do what we're doing with the External Affairs team, and we are so grateful for that. So at this time, I need to introduce to you our new Associate Vice Chancellor for K-12 Initiatives. He just actually met the rest of the team today. He will be coming on board July 12th, and that is Dr. Robert Den, who has an extensive history with K-12 initiatives in this state. also was one of the founders of Sales Tennessee, and we are delighted to have him here today, and we are very thankful to get him.
Thank you, Dr. McCormick, and thank you, members of the committee, Chancellor Tidings. I am very excited to continue service to the students in Tennessee as part of the External Affairs team at TBR. I will be charged with engaging with the consortium established by PC 967. I will collaborate with the Department of Education, expanding and strengthening their early post-secondary opportunities for K-12 students. And I will be supporting all of our community colleges and technical colleges as they expand and strengthen their local partnerships with the K-12 systems. And again, I'm very excited to be a part of this team, and I appreciate the opportunity to serve in this capacity. Thank you.
Government relations, as you all know, for many years, Ms. Ginger Hauser served in this role for the Tennessee Board of Regents. We are very excited to announce that she has been promoted to the Associate Vice Chancellor for Advancement. At this point, we now have a wonderful, I can't say replacement, but he's a very, very, very strong person in this role with a lot of experience coming from both Tennessee and Georgia, and that is our Executive Director for Government Relations, which is Andrew Dollar, and he has with him Greg Hazelwood, who is our legislative intern.
Thank you, Dr. McCormick. Members, Chancellor, thank you for the opportunity to stand before you. As Dr. McCormick said, we have a strong ground behind us, a strong foundation that we are building on. We've laid out in front of you a few of our goals for the upcoming year. We can kind of sum them up in about 10 words. 1, high visibility. 2, building strong relationships. 3, innovative public policy. 4, statewide advocacy. And finally, high ethical manners. That is our goal, that is our charge, and we look forward to working with the entire committee. It has been a fun couple of weeks. It's, I think, week 3 for me, and we've had a few events coming on that we've been called to the Chancellor's office to work upon. So I'm blessed to be in position from the Chancellor and from Dr. McCormick, and continue building out our team. So if there's anything you guys need from us, by all means, please be in touch.
There's one position left to fill in government relations, but hopefully we will have that done within the next few weeks. Institutional advancement, that is Ms. Ginger Hauser. She is she's the Associate Vice Chancellor.
Well, hello. We are getting started with this new thing, and I want to let you know that we have already hit the ground running. Just maybe 3 hours ago, we had a lunch meeting with about 10 development directors from across the state to begin talking about what does a system office support for advancement look like. And I'm very pleased that Chairman Markham and Regent Varlin were able to be part of that discussion. We are building something new. So I will be looking to those of you who have done this, that do this for a living, like Regent Varlin. And I know there are others on the board. I'm looking at Regent Apple, and I'm looking at Regent Reynolds that do a good bit of development work. And we are here to listen and to create basically a support structure for our campuses that are doing development work. We have not heretofore done that for them. They have succeeded or failed on their own. And as we are looking at a new system office, we want to make sure that we provide them the assistance that they need. What we heard, I think, Regents today from folks on the ground is that they really want that support and are open to it, and looking at how we can look at grant dollars, corporate dollars, infrastructure support. So that is my task before you. I have 10 books or so in my office to begin to learn. from best practices. Next week, I will be going to CASE, which is an organization around fundraising, to get my first level of training. So I want you to know I've been in this role a couple weeks, but we are hitting the ground hard. But I will be looking to you and want to have discussions with you and our campuses to figure out how we best develop the right kind of advancement and grant infrastructure. So with that, if you have any questions, I'll answer them. If not, I will turn it back over to Dr. McCormick. Okay.
Any questions, Regents, for? Any questions at this time? We'll hold that. Please continue.
Okay, and finally, we have marketing and digital strategy, and the Assistant Vice Chancellor for this department will be in place hopefully by July. And right now, I have asked that the directors come forward, and that would be Virginia Moreland, Jennifer Thompson, and Matthew Gann.
Raise this up a little bit. I have the pleasure to speak for the group here. We've laid out some strategies that we're going to be addressing over the next year. And the first and foremost is going to be writing a strategic plan for marketing and digital at the second half of this year. This is something that we've needed for a while, and we've been tasked to do this by Dr. McCormick, and we're going to hit the ground running for this. The other thing that we're really going to start right now is actually enhance the TBR brand from the traditional governing board to the college system of Tennessee. We have 40 institutions that power the workforce of this state. Tennessee Board of Regents institutions do that. And so we really need to emphasize that we are the college system of Tennessee and not just a governing board. We awarded about 21,000 diplomas, certificates, and associate's degrees last year, and that is a big deal in this state. So that's what we're going to focus on. And we're also going to strengthen relationships and collaborations among our colleges to make sure that we're sharing best practices when it comes to marketing and digital. A very good example of that, I don't know if you've ever seen the degree maps from Roane State. They are amazing, and every one of our institutions needs to use that as a best practice example of what makes it easy for a kid or an adult to find out exactly what they're going to need to graduate and to be successful. So again, I'm glad to be up here with our Director of Marketing and Advertising, Virginia Moreland, our Director of Content and Social Strategy, Jennifer Thompson, and Chad Kennedy is in the audience, a very talented web director that's going to be on our team. So any questions from the committee?
Questions or comments?
I want to make a comment.
Okay.
I cannot turn on my radio without hearing an advertisement. I have never seen a blitz like that. And
Yeah.
I'm not kidding. It's like nobody else is advertising that I hear. It's only you guys. Morning, noon, and night. It is fabulous.
Virginia is doing an amazing job with that
It is
campaign.
really, really good. And I live in Knoxville, so, but I am hearing it constantly. You are on the right networks. You are in the right time slots. When people are listening, and I just applaud you for that. It's been just amazing.
Chancellor Tidings is hopefully going to share a few numbers with you on the successes tomorrow, but I have some initial numbers up here. I'm not going to share. I'm just going to let her take that tomorrow. But they're amazing. So just to give you almost a little bit of example, our acquisition from social once running the campaign has been up 53%. That is a huge number. The visits to the institution pages, which essentially gather the social strategies and the stuff that we're implementing right now and then get them off to the institutions, that has gone up. I mean, you're talking about thousands of percent. So it's an amazing campaign, and Virginia has done an amazing job working with our agency to get that done. So all the credit goes to her. So.
Regent Griscom?
Thank you. As you all get ready to do this, and we've talked about this in the past, we hear a lot of noise out there about the cost of going to college, the debt you've got. I hope that we're able to put together in our marketing and digital strategy how to get people to not think about that first, but talk about what it really means if you do go on and get a credential. get a degree, go on to a four-year school, whatever it is, but to have a voice that says, let's get past this notion I can't afford to go.
Yep.
Particularly as we look at Reconnect, where you've got people who start at some point and want to come back, they're trying to figure out how to balance this. So I hope that as you all look at this, we find a way to not let that issue that's out there that people go to first, sort of drown out what we really are trying to say to people, and that is there's such an opportunity here for you to come back to do this, or when you graduate high school, step into it. But find the way that we put context around this notion that it just costs too much to go.
Exactly. We actually had a social post the other day on Twitter, and if you don't follow us on Twitter, it's TN Regent, so go for it. We had something about the CNBC story about Tennessee being the first to offer free community college and free college of applied technology tuition. And as we said in that post, that's actually just step one. There's so many other barriers and so many other mindsets that we have to get across to people, that we really have to focus on not just the tuition. The tuition freedom that it's part of our campaign is a great thing, but it's transportation, it's access to physical facilities, it's the cost of actually not going to work that day instead of going to class. There's so many barriers that we have to get across that is actually, it's going to be better for you in the future, and a very short future, if we can just get you in college. So,
and I'll add one more point. It also is that we can tailor programs to fit your schedule.
Exactly.
Rather than, I think there's a notion is that it's too rigid, and if you don't fall into an 8 to 5, well, I can't make it work. And that you've got a chance to share with people as we move forward. We can model programs to fit you, to bring you back, so you have this opportunity.
Exactly. So, and that's something we look forward to working with this committee on implementing. So, any other questions?
I'll mention something. Yeah. This is fantastic that the marketing group is also connected to external affairs, where you're looking at that total student. So with the focus for Reconnect, and you're getting a non-traditional student, there are a lot of circles of influences that have to be able to surround that student, from childcare, from transportation, that's going to look very different from your typical senior. So it's fantastic that that team is under one umbrella, because it seems like there could be a great marketing effort to not only tell a student, hey, don't worry about the cost, but don't worry about the support, because we've already reached out to community leaders to be able to provide that. This is fantastic.
Exactly. And I think the part of this reorganization that really works is by functional area. The government relations side of this, it allows us to do some amazing things with that, but also the creation of the offices of student success and the Office of Economic and Community Development. We're going to be working extremely close to them and helping Dr. Puryear with her new programs that she's going to be doing. And the biggest part that we're really pushing right now that could be a game changer, and I think Dr. Tidings has talked to this board about this, is the common application, where we can literally go to one application and apply to the community colleges and the technical colleges. It's going to be a game changer, and I think hopefully working with student success and information technology will have that available very soon. So. All right.
Very good. Thank you.
Thank you, guys.
Regent Varlant, I think you're going to see a slide here about how, in the Memphis Business Journal, about how this campaign came together. And Regent Griscom, just for your information, THEC has summoned all the marketing officers from the entire system to a meeting July 19th about beginning to develop the Reconnect message. Wonderful. Thank
Wonderful.
you.
As I listen to your comments, as a committee, I'm very thankful that this committee is in place to help the External Affairs Division. I can assure you of that. Chair Markham, that is all we have for item 1.
Thank you, Dr. McCormick. Are there any other questions or comments, Phil? This is an informational report only, so there's no information, no action required. I do have one more comment for you, but put that other slide back up. This is a recent comments editorial, I believe, on some of our advertising, and it's the new face of TBR, and it complements our ads as we move forward with our new face and the face of our students. And also, the face of TBR is changing, so I think it's a kind of a double compliment to TBR and our students, and it invites them in very well, and this article goes on to talk about that, and you're doing a good job. And we appreciate you introducing the new faces of the External Affairs Committee today. You've done an excellent job. You have a very big umbrella to cover, and you're a new face here for us, and we appreciate your good work. Thank you.
Thank you so much.
Please continue with the next agenda item.
I would like to discuss briefly the role of external affairs in relation to the Focus Act. And as I said earlier, we will continually be coming back to this committee for your guidance. Referring back to what Ginger was addressing earlier, today during our lunch hour, we held our first regional meeting of campus-wide development officers, and this was a very productive meeting resulting in a list of deliverables, including statewide collaboration regarding fundraising strategies and shared resources. We intend to hold these same meetings for all of the departments within External Affairs, K-12 initiatives, marketing and digital media, and government relations. All of these regional meetings will continue to allow our team to support our campus-level counterparts in the alignment of their objectives toward meeting the goals of the Focus Act, and this all being designed to support student success in the Drive to 55 initiative. As we continue to build our strategic plan as a division, we look forward to this committee's expert advice and guidance along the way. I think the end of item 2 is this is to be continued, and it's a work in progress, and we appreciate your time.
Any comments on the meeting today?
I just will say, this is very exciting. I think that it is overdue that we, as a system, put something together that's going to be helpful to all of our foundations to sort of meet where the state started out a few years ago. You know, the state saying this much % has to be raised by universities or community colleges or technical colleges in order to receive their money, and we worked very hard understanding what that meant, but we really never set up a system that supported our side, the side that where the foundations and folks have to raise money, and they are not all equal across the state. I am very, very happy and confident that there's going to be a lot of just great ideas coming from all of our community colleges and from the technical schools that are going to give us the opportunity to share that positive information. They are all doing so much good work, but it isn't necessarily equitable, and I think it's fair to say that some places do things better than others just for various reasons, and how do we just share those best practices? They seemed very excited to be at the table today and to help us define, if we get it just right, what does it look like. So I think it's a great opportunity for our system to help them help themselves, and just applaud the Chancellor for taking this opportunity and quickly trying to get it up and running, because it's never too early to start raising money, is it?
That's true.
I found the meeting very exciting and very helpful. I thought we found some cost-effective measures, some best practices, and I'm looking forward to taking the message forward to the rest of the state. So, any comments or questions? Please continue.
And item 3 is for informational purposes only. You should have received in your packets a copy of your current External Affairs Committee charter. As we've discussed today, the current charter is being presented to be revamped because we've added departments that weren't there obviously in the past. And again, we're not asking for any action today, but just a notification and a request to ask you all to consider that charter for revision for the next meeting, and I believe it's Committee on Committees, and then the September board meeting.
And everyone has a copy of the charter in their packet?
Yes, ma'am.
So, and we'll please review that, take a good look at it. Mary, do you have some comments?
Well, I would just say that the charter is part of the bylaws, so we would have to treat a change to the charter like an amendment to the, or a revision to the bylaws. So if we want to do that at the next meeting, we need to notice that proposed change this meeting for the next quarterly meeting.
And it's just the section of our committee that we're looking
Right.
at. But we do need to take a look at it. It's that time while we're fresh and new that we want to take a
So we
good
can
hard
just
look at
add that to tomorrow's agenda to give notice tomorrow at tomorrow's quarterly meeting, that at the September quarterly meeting, we'll be taking up a proposed change to the bylaws to address the charter for the External Affairs Committee.
to come up at the September meeting. All right, thank you. Is that clear?
Thank you.
Any other, and there's no action required today. Any other thing to come up before the committee? Any other thing?
That's it. Thank you.
That concludes your report. Thank you very much. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Thank you. Second? Second by Grissom.
Who made the motion?
Danny, did you make
Okay.
it?
Sorry.
You're not in the committee. We need to,
I'll move it.
Okay.
all right. Griscom and a second. Yolanda? Green, Bridget Green. Adjourned. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Well done, and exciting news on all fronts. So thank you all. Look forward to hearing more. We will now move into our final committee meeting for the afternoon, and that is Workforce Development. And with that, as we reset, we will have Regent Varlin come forward, who is our chair, Regents Apple, Fitzner, Griscom, Hatch, Markham, and Smith, please. Just a reminder, our students will be here one more hour for those of you who would like to take advantage and meet our students in the massage therapy program. Thank you.
Are they doing a massage?
With the charter, yeah, if they want to do that, it's a bylaw change.
Then it would be noticed at the September meeting.
Well, but they said they wanted to change them at the next meeting. If they want to do that, we need to notice at this
We
meeting.
didn't notice it when we noticed the materials or anything.
Well, I don't think it matters. We'll just put it on the agenda for tomorrow. The notice is tomorrow. So everybody has a whole quarter's notice that next quarter, we're going to take that up.
Bring that once before action items? or-
It's not an action item, it's just an informational, yeah, I
We
would,
were talking about the bylaws, or we
Yeah.
just mentioned it?
yeah,
We'll put it in.
and just add, yeah, we'll put it in the minutes and then that's, we will get it in. Is there coffee back there? Yes, just cream. Freeze. I need a blanket. I think I'm.
Are you ready to get started? Is everybody here? If you're not, let me know. Welcome to the Workforce Development Committee. I'm going to ask the Madam Secretary to call the roll, please.
Regent Apple,
Here.
Regent Fitzner,
Here.
Regent Griscom, Regent Hatch,
Here.
Regent Markham,
Here.
Regent Smith, Regent Varlin.
Here. Okay.
Madam Chair, you have a quorum.
Thank you. We have 3 agenda items today. They are an overview of the new role. We're just changing everything, aren't we, Chancellor? New role of the Workforce Development Committee,
some proposed new initiatives, and another discussion of the committee charter here, Ms. Moody. So I'm going to call on Vice Chancellor Carol Puryear to give the report on the overview of the new role of the Workforce Development Committee. Thank you, Vice Chancellor.
Okay, thank you very much. Good afternoon, Madam Chairperson and Honorable Committee. I am thrilled to be here today and share with you some of the ideas and work that the Workforce Development Committee is going to be working on. And I do appreciate this opportunity so very much. I think the most important thing is we need to think about what we're doing at the board office and how that's going to affect this committee. And so, Carol, if you'll go to the next slide. I'm feeling a little lonely, I'll have to say, and I wasn't lonely until Dr. McCormick was up here. She had lots of people to bring with her, and I'm only bringing you a draft org chart, but that's okay. I have great faith, and I'm good at treading water, so we'll get all this taken care of. Currently, it appears that my department will have 5 additional people that we will have full-time, including myself. That will make 6. We are in the process of hiring an administrative assistant and an assistant vice chancellor. My goal is to have them in place by August 1, and as others and budget allows, we will be hiring other people. But I can assure you that we are going to have good people, and the work will continue on, and you'll be very proud of what we're doing. So we won't lag behind that. I give you my word on that. The next slide, Carol. We want to talk a little bit about the mission, and I think we have to have a vision, otherwise we're going to be like Goldilocks at the fork of the road and not know where to go. And so when I sat down and talked, of course, with Chancellor Tidings, our mission is really to collaborate with business and industry and government agencies to develop and deliver customized training, rapid response programs that will provide quality training for workforce skills that are defined for an organizational success. Our whole division will be to support workforce development across the state, from Memphis to Elizabethton and everywhere in between. We will be the sounding board, the first contact. We will work with an organization when they're thinking about coming to Tennessee, through that process, through the development, through the delivery, and on. I think we all realize that workforce development is a relationship game. And one of the things that I've learned since 1996 in working with workforce is it is that relationship. So we want to work with the company on the front end, and when they, 20 years from now, need additional training, they think of the Tennessee Board of Regents and our 40 institutions that can deliver that training. So that's our goal. Also, we've got 2 goals that support the mission. One is to provide strategic leadership in all phases of the development process to deliver those quality programs and customized programs. They will not be off the shelf. They won't say, oh, well, we taught this last week to this other company, we'll teach it again. They will be customized to what the company needs. So there'll be a lot of legwork in the beginning, but we think that that is exactly what an organization needs. They do not want a one-size-fits-all training program, and we will not deliver that. One of the second main goals is to develop the TBR policies and procedures for the campuses and workforce. I'm not one to put a lot of loopholes and hoops and things for people to jump through, but I do think we have to have some boundaries and we have to have a process. And I think more importantly, is next year when I stand before you, you're going to want some measurements. And so the campuses have to have some measurements as well, so we know how we're succeeding, our success stories, and things that we need to improve on. So those are our goals. Some of the objectives and how we're going to reach our goal and sustain our mission. Certainly we're going to establish good partnerships with both the community, the government agencies, our campuses, working with business and industry, and spending a lot of time listening. I don't know if your grandmother told you this or not, but mine certainly did. You have 2 ears and 1 mouth, and you really need to learn. She used to call me KK. She'd say, KK, you need to do that. You need to learn to use those ears more and that mouth less. And when you were the youngest, you just talked all the time. You didn't have a choice. But so when we are working with business and industries, we will have to do that to find out exactly what they want. We're also going to develop something called the Tennessee Trained Academy, and I'll share that in a little bit. We're also reviewing the possibilities of doing a TBR student warranty policy, which is very exciting, and then partnering again with the Tennessee Board of Regents. The warranty program is a little bit like when you buy your car and you have a warranty from bumper to bumper, and they always sell that as a great point for you? Well, it's sort of where we're going to try and develop a policy and a procedure where that I'm going to guarantee that if I say Carol can do ABC and Carol gets to Regent Apple's office and she can't do A, B, and C, we'll take Carol back and train Carol to make sure she's up to speed. Now, I picked on Carol, but we know Carol would have A, B, and C and all the way through Z taken care of. But that's a guarantee. That's standing behind our graduates. I don't have a problem with that. I know that we're producing excellent workers and excellent students to go on to join the workforce, and we're just going to sort of promote that a little bit more. And I think the chancellor and some of the other offices are working to all those details out exactly, but we are excited about that. Next slide, Carol. The next couple of slides, buckle up because we're going to go pretty quickly, because you have to have a quick way to do this, and you have to have an elevator speech, because I'm not going to grab people and keep them forever. So we're really going to collaborate, and we're going to work together as a system. We're going to work together with our industry. So the first part will be the collaboration, and I have to come up with some type of a little slogan sort of thing, because Utah has custom fit, South Carolina has Ready SC. We've got, the Quick Start in Georgia. We've got we had to come up with something, so we've started with Tennessee Trained. The next step will be something where we're assessing, the next slide please, assessing the training, and this will be very confidential in the beginning when we're recruiting those companies to make sure, again, that we are listening and doing what they need to. We will stay with them from the very beginning, and they'll have one person, one contact person, and that's critical. I have been in meetings with ECD and labor, and many of you have too, where you're trying to recruit this company to come to Tennessee, but you have 8 different people talking about sometimes the same 8 things that they can do, and it gets very confusing for the company. So we have got to have a story, we've got to have a message, and we've got to be united as one system in doing that. And that's what's going to help us to take care of that. And then what we do, we develop. We will develop this customized training, and we will make sure that we do it in a timely manner. They will not ask for training in February and then in October still not have it. We'll work on that. We'll make sure that it's ready, has the rigor that they need. And when you develop a workforce program, you kind of start from the back, at least I do. I have to know what job you're going to have and what skills you need to have in that position, and then work backwards to make sure that we're meeting that and doing it in a manner in which the business wants the output to be what we're going to have. So we're excited about that. I promise you, one size will not fit all. And I also want you to know about the many, many people at our campuses who are experts. They are subject matter experts, they're instructional design experts. They know how to do this. There are wonderful stories from one end of this state to the other, as well as north and south. So we're going to take those ideas, we're going to take the best practices and put those together and share that as we do the developing of the program. And the delivering is, of course, the last stage. And this will be either at the company's facilities, they can be at the campus facilities, they can be somewhere where we may have to rent them, but we will get them a spot so that they can receive the training that they need. If they need training at midnight, now, I'm usually in bed at midnight, so I'm probably not going to be the best one to help them there. But if they want up at 3 o'clock in the morning, I can be there with bells on and help deliver that training. But I do have to kind of shut down about 9, so if I ever call you after 9, do not take the call. But that will be the item that we're going towards as we work through to develop this new area. It's a little fluid, and it's not quite all gelled yet, but I have great faith that it will be, and in the end, we'll have something that we're very proud of. And Regent Varlin, this concludes my first agenda item.
Okay, who's got questions? Tom Griscom?
Now, this is great. Let me ask this, when you get to this point, are you going to build in a feedback mechanism so you
Yes,
can
sir.
go back out and say, we're doing all these things, let me know, are they effective, are we hitting the right things, what could we do a little bit different? So there's a feedback piece so you can keep this
Yes,
as
sir,
an
we have to have
ongoing
the
learning.
circle. We
Okay.
have to close that circle. And I'm sorry, but in my haste to keep on going. I forgot that that's written on my script. But we have to assess. We've got to make sure that we did what we were supposed to for that organization. And so we will assess the training. They will, for lack of a better term, grade what we're doing, and then we will make improvements and changes as necessary. But this will all be very customized, but we have to get the feedback. You have to know whether or not we're doing a good job or not. And there's no other way to do that than to assess them after the training, and then I'd like to assess them 3 months after the training and see the people that went through our training program, how are they progressing? Oh, I'm sticking to the floor. How are they progressing to the other people that maybe did not go through the training program? We did that at Murfreesboro one time, and I'm proud to say that people that went through that program did much better and maintained employment versus some of the others. So we will have an assessment loop.
Are these some of the training potentially certificate-type programs? So we
Yes,
could
sir.
actually be adding to the Drive to 55 numbers?
Yes, sir. We're getting to that too. That's one of the things that I'd like to see happen, is that it's crazy to me to have someone go through a training program and maybe a year later they then decide that they want to go to a community college or a technical college and not get any credit for that. That's crazy. So we're going to have to work very closely with academic affairs and the SACS group, the COE group, and those campuses will be our best friends to make sure there's no snag in that. But if they complete a 40-hour welding program, then when they come maybe to the TCAT, they'll get credit for that, or to the community college. We've got to make that circle work too. Thank you.
Any other questions?
Can I make a comment?
Please.
I think this is a great move, and I think it really sends a powerful message to both our students, because we're all about student success, but also to our communities about, you know, what it is that we're all about and how we connect our student success to economic development. So I think this is a really great move.
Great,
I'd also
thank you.
like to say that when your passion spreads to the rest of your org chart, when you get it filled out, all I can say is look out.
Thank you, sir.
Well, and I want to say to you, Vice Chancellor Prayer, first of all, thank you for all the hard work you've put into this, and I know we're getting ready to hear more, but you absolutely understand how important relationships are in this business, and that is a lot about keeping the relationships and having them, because you can have a form to fill out, but it's just as important to have somebody that may not want to write it on a form, but they'll pull you aside and tell you what they may not be willing to put on a form. And I know you understand that in terms of the relationships that go into these partnerships and how important they are. Also want to just commend you on your understanding of the product that we're going to be producing and how we have to be able to stand behind it. I hope there's going to be some cool little Tennessee Train thing that goes on their diplomas or their certificates, that, you know, some cool kind of logo. Where's marketing right now? But because I can just see that needs to be on whatever we present them with. So it's like our guarantee, seal of approval. Thank
Like
you.
the Good Housekeeping seal
Yeah,
years
if
ago.
there are no more questions, this is informational only, and no action is required, so we'll move on to the next agenda item.
Okay, thank you. And that next agenda item is simply some new initiatives that we're working on, and they all kind of flow together. Here we'll go to the next one. One is partnerships, as we've talked about, and those relationships are absolutely critical. I've spent a great deal of time with the state ECD department in the last 55 days and taking a look at that and looking at what we can do. I'm happy to say that they are excited to be working with us on some marketing products and marketing, of course, with the campuses at being the center, but taking perhaps a good video of what we do for workforce across the state, as well as marketing pieces, brochures, a playbook. I think that'll be really important. When we worked with getting Beretta here and some of the other organizations, there was another state, I won't call their names, but they had the best video and we did not have one, and that was an embarrassment. So we're working hard to create a type of a video in the next few months to be able to market what we're doing with workforce. We've got a good system, so now we need to market it. They have also been very beneficial in working with our certification program that I'll talk about in just a little bit, Tennessee Academy, but to help work together with their staff and our staff working side by side, and that will really strengthen our workforce commitment. Also, of course, we cannot underestimate working with business and industry. We're going to work with folks that aren't just bringing in new business to the state, but also expanding their companies. That's critical. And the small businesses that we have in our communities, that's just as critical for the economic success as anything. And so we want to open that up. And a big buzzword lately has been the apprenticeship programs, and very important to kind of take a look and see what's going on there. I've been to several meetings this week and last week about apprenticeships. So what would be nice if we could have in our department a person that could work with a business or industry that wants to start an apprenticeship program, but they do not want to do all the paperwork. They don't want to do all that part of it. And we're able to help do that and then match them up with the right institution and the right people on the campus so we can make this a success. Again, certainly keeping the new and the existing companies. And then establish a workforce subcouncil. And again, since I've been working in workforce for a long time, one of the things that keeps coming up is that we need to pull the workforce people across the state together and let them develop some best practices and develop a subcouncil and have them share those ideas, work on those measurements, talk about that assessment, how are we doing, and share that as a group. And so I think a way to do that would be to establish a workforce official subcouncil group. In the past we've had some unofficial ones, but this would be official. And what I'd like to do is go across the state and have some regional industry folks come talk to the group, share with us about what's going on. So that's where we are on that. The next slide, Carol. One of the things that we're talking, now I'm an 8th grade school teacher by heart and will probably always be one, but I believe we have to train people to do what we want them to do and help them understand it. So we're going to start the Tennessee Trained Academy. And I've got some sample work that will include, but basically it will be about a 36-hour program that we will invite ECD representatives to and campus representatives to come and learn the new way, the new TBR system way with the community colleges and technical colleges, how to deliver economic training. It's not so much how to deliver it, our campuses know how to do that, but how to do it systematically, how to understand the stories, the tale, and what we're going to do, and we will do that on a statewide basis. One of the coursework topics that I have up there is the Economic Development 101. That's not insulting anyone, saying that they have to start back at 101, but it's just getting that connection, that one message to be consistent, to go out, looking at the strengths in each of the organizations, looking at the items that, how to build that team, how to build a team, because when we're used to having 5 or 6 different people at the table talking about our services, how do we join that together and speak with one voice? So we have lots of different topics. We're working on those. We hope to kick that off in August. But the economic development folks are working with us, and we'll tie that in. And I laughed and said I was an 8th grade school teacher. There'll be tests and there'll be homework assignments and things that they have to come back and do, because these are the people that are going to be telling the story, and we need to all make sure we're telling the same story. And I know that they'll have a lot of experience and expertise to help me develop this further. But the Academy's goal is really to present key principles, concepts, and strategies that we need to make sure that we understand the success and we're able to respond to the economic needs of our communities. It will make a big difference, I think, in going forward. And that concludes the second agenda item.
I just have a couple questions. I'm sorry to interrupt you, but I had a question about the workforce subcouncil. I would encourage you, I would hope, that this won't become siloed separately from faculty subcouncil that already exists. And I only mention that because as we are the new TBR, where we're focusing more on cohesion and less of the sort of technical colleges are operating in their space, and the community colleges and universities are sort of operating in their own. I encourage you to include representation, even if it's just the faculty regents from the technical colleges and from the community colleges on that subcouncil, so that there can be cohesion and crosstalk between those two things. If we don't do that, then we could potentially have some, well, certainly inefficiency, but maybe even conflict that arises in creating policy for faculty and moving through academic affairs, and then this more dynamic space that you're hoping to be reactive to industry needs. And that encourages
That
me.
is a great idea, and we'll certainly
Let's
consider
not go
that
too far,
and have
but-
people, no, sir, thank you so much, and share that information, because we do not want a silo. Workforce can't survive without the faculty members. We've got to work together to make that happen. So I'll make sure that we're on that, okay? Thank you.
Anyone else? Carol, I want to make a comment. I'd like to make a comment, and it is, I sit in several boards and things across my area, East Tennessee, and it always just floors me when particularly there are companies that want to need this type of training and stuff. But a lot of our chambers really aren't aware. I hope some of this outreach as we go through economic development really goes down to people that are doing economic development in various ways, whether it's through chambers or those kind of things, that it just doesn't stop at the state's door. But the more important thing, because I'll hear very contradictory comments, even from people that are with the state that don't understand what's going on. So there's a lot to do in the marketing of this Tennessee Trained and what that means. And like you say, the elevator speech, I'm thinking we have so much economic development in the East Tennessee area and workforce needs, et cetera, but trying to get that next thing, that next bit of information down to them so that they understand, because they're really the voice that is being, that's whispering, and all of the, when you're getting the rubber hitting the road, is on that level with our companies that are not just coming in, but that are there. I mean, I think of several counties in my area that are growing so incredibly, but it does concern me when I sit in these meetings and they're like, oh, nobody's doing this, and I'm going, where have you been? But it's just, that's a very big consideration, that it not just stay in Nashville. Thanks.
Right. That's a great idea. We'll figure out how we can expand that, and there's a great marketing team that said they were going to work with me, and I'm sure they will, so we'll have to put together something and do some target marketing for especially the chamber folks. Industrial boards are critical, the manufacturing groups across the state. We're going to have to hit all of those to make sure they get the story and know what we're doing.
Well, and I sit on some of those manufacturing boards, the development boards, and those types of things, so maybe we can sit down, and some of you guys sitting here too, the same thing can, when the rubber hits the road, where is it really going? It just can't stay in Nashville.
Exactly. Okay. Thank you. We will continue on, and that is a little bit repeat of what you've just heard with the charter changing. So what we need to do is to look at this committee charter, which is, of course, part of the bylaws. And I believe that was in your packet as well, but I also have it on the slide for you just to take a look at some of the things there. The first, number one, there's just some things listed that just clean up that I'm looking at, but I value your opinion and want your advice. So as you look through these, either today or tomorrow or through email, just let me know how we need to make any changes that you see necessary. But to me, the first one, the universities are no longer a part of Tennessee Board of Regents, so they really should not stay in our charter. So we did a mark through there, and then I just marked through the numbers and just called us the community and technical colleges. I'm not sure what the numbers are supposed to represent, but y'all are smarter than I am. Maybe that's an important part, and I just didn't know it. So that's one of the changes that I thought about as we went through. The second part really dealt with, again, going back to what we were talking about, Regent Griscom, to make sure that that training counted for something. And so I added the three main areas right now that seems to be pretty hot in Tennessee: the manufacturing, the IT, and the transportation. Making sure that those courses, certainly I'll work with academic affairs, the campuses, to make sure that that training can work together. That list may need to change, that wording may need to change, but that was sort of the plan a few weeks ago when we wrote this, but very important to do. And then Carol, B and C, I didn't have any changes, and as you review those, you might. D and E, also, I didn't have any changes, but certainly I welcome your input. And then the F, I didn't have any changes under F either, but I do encourage you to take a look at that, see if that fits into what you've heard today, see if there are any changes. I welcome your assistance and look forward to the discussion. And you may not be prepared to discuss it today, and that's fine. I'm here all day tomorrow, and I think you all know how to get in touch with me, and I'll be checking with you as well. This will go to the ad hoc committee in August, I understand.
Are there any questions, again, for Vice Chancellor per year? Well, if there are no more questions, this again was informational reporting. There's no need for any action, but I will ask that this be considered in terms of what we need to do for our board meeting to make these changes to the charter. Okay, thank you. Thank you again, Vice Chancellor.
Thank you.
If there are no other questions, then I will take a motion to adjourn from
So moved.
Regent Fitzner, and then a second from Regent Smith, right? To adjourn. Thank you. We are adjourned.
Thank you.
Thank you all. It's exciting. So Dr. KK, our 8th grade teacher, she is a dynamo. So we're so grateful she's on the team. Yeah, thank you, Regent Varlin. Dr. Whaley, if you could make your way to the podium, let me take care of a couple of housekeeping items. The first is just for the board, your committee reports and materials for tomorrow's meeting will be on our TBR app later this afternoon. And for our committee chairs, a copy of your committee report will be at the front desk of the hotel as we return from dinner tonight. One slight change for tomorrow morning, given the weather forecast. We will still have a group photo at 8:45, so please be prompt. But rather than have it outside in the rain with those great Rhone State umbrellas, I think the decision is to do it in here on this great stage. So once again, be prompt so we can take that at 8:45. Chancellor, any announcements before I turn to Dr. Whaley?
Just to say thank you to Rhone State again for today, for the great lunch that we had, and to the board for all the great work that we've done today.
Thank you. It has been a good working afternoon, and it is all about student success, as your letterhead here shows. As the Chancellor just said, thank you for the hospitality, and I would be remiss if we did not thank our TCAT colleagues from Crossville, Harriman, Jacksboro, and Oneida and Huntsville for hosting lunch for us today on our arrival, and the wonderful presentation tables that you all had set up so we could see some of your good work. So thank you very much. Dr. Whaley, I think we're going to hear from you at 9 o'clock in the morning, so which we'll look forward to. Any announcements for us?
Well, just, Madam Vice Chair, Chancellor, members of the board, it's just our honor to have you here on campus today. We enjoy it tremendously, and want to remind you just of a couple of things that our students with the massage therapy program are still right up there, Regent Varlin. You can still make it, and so they'll be there for the next few minutes. We also have shuttles that folks just up the stairs and out the doors can direct you to if you do need shuttle services back to the hotel. We will have our hospitality suite available beginning at 5 o'clock at the hotel, and then at 6:20 if you are going to ride the shuttles back to campus for dinner, those will also be made available. As you come back to campus, we'd like to direct you your attention, please, to the displays from some of our K-12 and business and industry partners that will be highlighting this evening during dinner, and so those will be scattered around the place where you'll be eating in the student lounge where you were today for lunch. So we'll hope that you engage with those folks and enjoy the things that they have to share with you. It's our honor to have you here.
It is our honor to be here. Thank you. And what you have chosen to focus on tonight is in perfect alignment with the conversation we've had this afternoon. Thank you, Dr. Whaley, for your leadership. And we know, believe me, it doesn't look like there are many of us, but we know what goes into moving this many people over a 24-hour period. So we are grateful for the care and the feeding and the hospitality here at Rhone State. With that, folks, after this productive afternoon, and thanks to the Chancellor's leadership and all of you on the team, it sounds like we've got a lot of work to do, but we are well on our way to our goal of being a premier community college and technical college system, and for that we are all grateful. If there are no objections, we will stand adjourned. Thank you all.